Hi everybody, it's Marcus from MMA Properties with your May 2023 Arlington market update. So we'll take an in-depth look at what's going on in the real estate market in the town of Arlington. So there's lots of headline numbers around today and relatively easy to get information, I guess it's fair to say, but it's much more difficult to make sense of it. And so that's what we're going to do, throughout this quick video. We're going to give you a sense of exactly what's going on in the market and put some data behind the headline numbers, if you like, and show you why some of the headline numbers aren't necessarily correct. I'm going to show you lots of information, lots of graphs here with what's going on in the market. Inevitably, people ask, where can I find this information? And specifically, can I find this information for other towns? And the answer is yes. If you go to our website, maproperties.com, you will find a statistics section on there, and there's about 24 different statistics on there now. I've just added, for example, rental information about the rental markets, both long-term and relatively short-term, last year or so, to give you a sense of what that market's about. So I'm always adding things to it. So as well as a lot of information, into a breadth of information, if you will, it's there for about 50 different towns. So today we're going to be talking about Arlington, but if you want information on Lexington or Winchester, Acton, we cover a vast majority of towns in the area, almost all the towns you would be interested in Massachusetts. So lots of information there for you if you're interested in moving into or looking into additional towns. So the agenda for today, going to give you a quick, probably the last time I'll do this, an overview of what happened in 2022. It's important to get a sense of that year in terms of what happened to it. Then we're going to look at single family and condominiums in the first 4 months of the year. So January through April, we're going to take a look at. Then we'll kind of give a sense of what's happening in the market. And perhaps our predictions and our advice for the rest of 2023. So 2022, we're characterizing this as a year of two halves. Driven, no surprise, by the mortgage interest rates, of course. And let's take a look at those first of all. The blue bars are the actuals and the greens are the forecasts. I broke out 2022 and 2023 quarter by quarter, just so you can see how steeply or how sharp the rise in mortgage interest rates was. As this graph shows, it is predicted, it is forecast that interest rates will begin to decline through the rest of 2023. A word of caution on that, though. We've been tracking this information for a long time, and they're not very good at forecasting information. This data here comes from the Mortgage Banker Association. They are not alone in not being very good at predicting, forecasting mortgage interest rates. We also see a lot going on in the market. Clearly, just in the last few days, another bank was taken over, First Republic, this time by JP Morgan. And so there's a lot happening in the market that is having an influence on mortgage interest rates. If you look at the actual data, and I have that a little bit later on, you can see it's beginning to settle down somewhere between 6 and 7, about 6.4. And over the last month or so, not changed by that much on aggregate. And so even though the rate of decline is there and it seems relatively steep, I think reality is it perhaps won't be that steep as we kind of move forward. So in terms of how many home sales we saw, single family home sales in this case, Arlington doesn't change that much. It's kind of pretty static in terms of the number of home sales. Condominium changes, there's a lot more changes in the number of condominiums. There's much more fluctuation in the number of condominium sales, but single family has remained relatively static. And whilst declined slightly in 2022 in comparison to 2021, not by very much. Prices, though, were a little bit different. We saw a substantial increase in the average sale price in the first half of 2022. In this case, I've done it by year, except for 2022, where I broke it out by the two different halves, first half and second half. Because you can see in the first half, we saw a substantial rise in the average sale price. Second half, that scaled back. And whilst it was still higher than 2021, it was clearly a lot lower than we saw in the first half of the year. We always track a ratio of the sale price or the sold price to the list price. So imagine a home comes on the market for 800,000, sells for 800,000. That's 100% sale price to list price ratio. So here what I've done is I plotted that ratio by the under agreement date. So the price when the price a home is going to sell for is decided at under agreement date. It is published at sale date. And so here I've tracked the under agreement date. That is the point at which the sale price is agreed as opposed to the sale price where it is published. As you can see, first 3 months of the year were very buoyant, 4 months really, but then it began to decline, and it declined throughout the rest of 2022, so that the average in December was below 100%, and we haven't seen that in Arlington for a long time. So you can clearly see in this metric, which is a great metric for buyer confidence, as an indication of buyer confidence, that it declined quite sharply. So that was kind of a synopsis of 2022. There's a lot more information to share in the Arlington Market Review 2022-2023. Lots of information in that. It's available on our website if you want to have a read of it. If you need a hard copy, just reach out to us. We can get you a hard copy. We have lots of them in the office. But there's a lot more information in that about the single family, the condominium, the luxury market, the rental market, and so on. Lots of information within that about 2022 and also some predictions for 2023. Okay, let's turn our attention to 2023. Single family, first of all. I'll look at condominiums in a moment. So first off, let's take a look at the number of under agreements, or the number of sales. So here what I'm plotting, the blue is 2022, the reddish color is 2023. The number of properties that went under agreement in the first 4 months of the year, cumulative. And as you can see, it's dramatically lower in 2023 than it was in 2022. Now, important to differentiate here really whether that's a lack of buyer demand, lack of buyers, or a lack of sellers. And so let me give you the indications. Primarily a lack of sellers, to kind of cut to the chase. But let me just kind of give you a sense of what those numbers are for the first month of this year in comparison to the last 2 years. So 2021, we saw about 96 homes come on the market, irrespective of their status, whether they expired or sold or remained on the market. About 96 in 2021. It rose in 2022 to 106. Remember, we saw a substantial increase in sale price in 2022. And so a lot more homes came on the market in 2022. Less sold, actually, but interestingly. 2023, it's now 76. So it went from 96 to 106 to 76. And that's about a 30% reduction over 2022, which is clearly very substantial. If that projects forward at that ratio, time will tell. It's a little early for me to put some projections out there. I like to wait until we're past the halfway point of the year and we've really seen how the spring market plays out. Then I'll start to publish some projections. That would get us to a number of about 210 for the year, which is dramatically lower than we've seen in the last decade or more. So time will tell whether that's actually the case. But certainly far less homes coming on the market in 2023 in comparison to 2023. And that's really what's driving this, because if we now look at the ratio, that sale price or sale price to list price ratio, you can see, even though it declined throughout of 2022, as we've come into 2023, so it's bounced back to its historical numbers. And so what we're seeing here is less listings coming on the market and buyers still having confidence in the market, having to compete, which is inevitably pushing that sale price to list price ratio higher. So that's kind of interesting that less supply, strong demand, and that buyer confidence indicator, or that sale price list price ratio metric, is actually bounced back to the numbers we saw back in last year, and actually we saw pre-COVID. In terms of the average price, though, actually it's declined slightly, not by very much. So what we're seeing here is a change in distribution. It's not that the buyers are not willing to jump into the market and offer over asking. They clearly are. But we're seeing a change in the distribution of homes coming on the market, and that's pulling down the average sale price. So that's what we're seeing there in the average sale price numbers. In terms of the number of homes on the market, you won't be surprised to see that there actually aren't very many. We only have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 below $1 million, and actually not that many more above $1 million, 6 and 9 above $1 million too. So very few homes currently on the market. No surprise there, just because there are just so few homes coming on the market. Almost everything is being snapped up. And it's likely that some of these homes actually will have sold and will sell or have already sold in early May. So let's turn our attention to the condominium market next. So same idea. Let's take a look at those cumulatives. Again, you can see they're lower. Let me give you the numbers on that. So first 4 months of the year, what was listed, irrespective of its final status. 2021, it was 109. 2022, it was 92, and 2023, we're at 76. And that's about a 17% reduction from what we saw in 2022. That would get us a projection below 200 condominiums selling, which again, as I mentioned with single family, is very low. And let's hold off on making that judgment yet. Let's let the rest of the spring market, the next 2 or 3 months play out. And we can be able to kind of get a better handle on where we see the full year projections to be at that point. So, but certainly a lot less homes coming on the market, or condominiums coming on the market, and therefore, unsurprisingly, a lot less condominiums are actually selling. That ratio, slightly over 100. It's bounced back from where it was, which at the end of last year was at about 95. It's bounced back to just over 100%, perhaps 102, 103. We always get a lower ratio for the condominiums than we do with single families. That's always the case historically. That's always been the case. And that's kind of tracking. But certainly it looks like it's bouncing back from the numbers that we saw previously. In terms of the sale price, it's actually risen somewhat, almost to 900,000. We're about 800,000, the average sale price last year. We're upwards about 875 or so this year. So we are seeing a substantial increase in that sale price. Combination of two things, of course. Number one, buyer demand, in this point pulling that higher, but also a change in distribution with more expensive condominiums coming on the market. So average sale price considerably higher with less sales. And back to the current homes on the market. Unsurprisingly, not very many. Here we are at 9 condominiums, on the market on May the 1st of this year. So very few, a consequence really of less condominiums coming on the market. So what does that mean? Information's great, but what does it actually mean? So anybody who's watched these presentations before will have seen this slide before. It was really talking about the effect of COVID, how buyers were looking for a different house, different condominium, different home, and that shook up the market. To some extent, brought a lot of homes on the market. As well as that, we saw a substantial price increase in Arlington. That also brought substantial homes on the market too. That's come to an end. Certainly the effects of COVID have come to an end. Prices are still rising, perhaps not as sharply in single family as we've seen previously. Prices are still rising, which will bring sellers into the market. But it may well be that there just simply aren't enough sellers who want to sell at this time of year or this year. And that's kind of where we say these changing housing demands, the effect of COVID has kind of run its course, if you like. And so we're back to, unsurprisingly, demographic changes that are driving the market. This is a population pyramid for the US. It's kind of based on age. The 2 yellow bars, the lower yellow bar, the first-time home buyers, they clearly see Arlington as a great destination. proximity to Boston, good school systems. So it's kind of ticks all the boxes for today's first-time home buyers, and more affordable than the towns around it, Belmont, Lexington, and Winchester, for example. So it's more affordable, but still and ticks many of the boxes. Then, of course, we've got the downsizers looking to move out of those towns around Arlington, seeing Arlington as a great destination. And this is why we've always seen higher sale price, list price ratios in Arlington than we have in surrounding towns. So we're back to the kind of normal way, the normal driver in the market, if you will. Mortgage interest rates, I said I'd give you the kind of the nitty gritty of the mortgage interest rates. Here they are. This goes back to 2000. We are still at a substantial, very high numbers. The last time we were at these numbers was in the early 2000s. But as you can see, it's bouncing around between 6 and 7%, around about 6.5%, 6.4 from recollection. Last time I looked, last Thursday actually. But it's really not. We're not seeing that reduction that we potentially, or at least we anticipated seeing, if we believe the forecasts that we see, and so they're really not. Take them with a pinch of salt. We look to be a little bit sticky between that 6 and 7 at about 6.5%. So they're a little bit sticky at that high number. So what does that mean for the predictions for the rest of 2023? So clearly an awful lot of demand pushing that sale price list price ratio higher. We see that as a great indication of buyer confidence. They do have confidence in the market. The challenge for today's buyers is there simply is not enough inventory. That's why we saw very low numbers of homes on the market and a high ratio, sale price list price ratio. So buyers, it's tough this year. There's no question. Perhaps tougher than it's been in previous years where there was still the competition, but at least there were homes to look at. Now there just aren't enough homes coming on the market, certainly in the first 4 months of this year, to kind of satisfy that demand. And so for sellers, to some extent, it's the effect of COVID, the jumping on the high price point bandwagon, if you excuse the word, is kind of run its course. We're back to that normal price, the normal age distribution or the normal distribution of homes drivers in the market in terms of that population pyramid, first-time home buyers and downsizers. So, a relatively easy market to sell your home, although be cautious here. And this is where, I would add some caution to sellers thinking that it's easy to get top dollar for your home. Relatively easy to sell, much more difficult to get top dollar. And think of it this way, and these are the 5 things that we like to focus on. The first one is really around pricing. Today's buyers are still, and we do see number of homes sticking on the market because they came on too high, and not just in Arlington, but in surrounding towns too. Pricing is absolutely critical to getting the highest price for your home. Pricing correctly what the market is used to, that's absolutely key to getting top dollar. But also, as well as that, and specifically for first-time home buyers who are stretching to get into today's housing market, to get on that first rung of the housing ladder, if you will, creating a product that today's buyers want, doing that preparation, painting the home, for example, interior, making it so today's buyers can look at the home, move in, and they don't have to do anything because to some extent, they don't have the money to do that. And so creating that move-in ready product, if you will, is absolutely critical, again, to getting high prices. And having done that, you need to wow them. And now this is what you need to add to it to get that 110, 115% over asking. Adding that staging, adding that wow factor so that, they walk in the home and they love this home. I don't need to do anything to it. I don't need to do anything. I can move in. I'm done, which is great because I don't have the money anyway. So I can afford to pay a little bit more for the home because I know I don't have to keep anything in reserve. And wow, look at this home. And then, finishing it all off, of course, the marketing that sits around that. And so be cautious as a seller in this market that you don't just put a home on the market and it will sell. Probably will. but will it sell for top dollar? And that's clearly what everybody wants. What the sellers want, not necessarily what the buyers want, of course, certainly what today's sellers want. And you really do need to think about, pricing correctly, creating that move-in ready product, wowing them with staging, and then the marketing that goes along with that. And that's what gets you top dollar, even in a market where there are not that many homes on the market. So that's the May 2023, get my years right, I've been counting 21, 22, no, May 2023 market update. Lots of information here. We have a lot more information to share. So if you have any questions about what's going on in the market, you want some more details about what's happening specifically in your area, but maybe not just in Arlington, perhaps in other towns where you're looking, maybe you want to move to one of those other towns, please reach out to us. We love to talk about this, as you can imagine, but maybe you've seen from this. So please reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. So with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month for hopefully June's 2023's market update. Bye.